Well, unfortunately, the Maratnz 2275 is back. So here's the weird thing. You know, as I don't always do this on camera, but I test all of the inputs and, you know, make sure everything's working. All the inputs were working fine. Took it down to the shop and set this up. And actually, I always test phono and auxiliary, right, whenever I put one of these out for the shop owner. So connected this. Auxiliary's fine, put a record on, phono's fine, and then maybe 15 minutes into it, I start to hear some crackling on the left channel. So left channel crackles, and then lose the left channel phono. Go to FM, no problem with FM, auxiliary, no problem with auxiliary. Turn it off, turn it back on, phono for a little bit, crackle, then lose the channel. You know, standard troubleshooting is buttons, switches, knobs, all that kind of stuff. See which one kind of triggers the fault. None did. To rule out a bad turntable, RCA cable, swap those in the back. Problem persisted with the left channel. Right, so brought it back to my shop, and which is my garage. My shop to continue troubleshooting and see if I can determine what the problem is. Could be an issue with the RCA jack, probably not real likely. I've got to figure out by looking at the service manual exactly where the phono equalizer section or the preamp section is. They're called different things by different manufacturers, to see if maybe there's a component. Kind of leaning towards maybe a flaky capacitor or transistor in the phono preamp. Could also be a connector. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this, and I'm not going to put you through the torture. And I have a scope, and I use the scope occasionally. But I'm just going to run some sound through the receiver and see if I can kind of determine what might be going on with the phono section. So I'm going to break away to do that, and then I'll come back and let you know what I found. I'll also reference the service manual if something doesn't pop up immediately. And really what I'm testing for initially is are the RCA connections good? That's all I'm going to be doing here. And I could do that with a multimeter. But sometimes it's easier just to run sound through it and then just kind of poke around. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll come back with my initial findings for that. And then I'll talk about what the service manual says, because I do want to look at the block diagram and kind of figure out how everything is being routed through the receiver to see if I can kind of figure out where the signal might be getting lost if it's not a physical wiring issue. So anyway, let me jump on this, and I'll let you know what I found here in just a few minutes. All right, so I want to kind of show you what I have determined so far. Didn't take long. I actually am feeding a 1 kilohertz tone into the phono jacks using my signal generator. So you can see that I have perfectly balanced sound on, let's see, perfectly balanced sound on left and right, very even. So now what I'm going to do is, so that's coming into the board. Now I'm going to go to the output of the board and show you the channel imbalance, and then we'll start tracing the signal through that board to figure out if we can identify a component. The board is tiny. There's not a whole lot to it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm trying to pull up the service manual right now, but my PC in the garage is not cooperating, so I may have to go in and actually print up part of the schematic and service manual to figure out where the signal is exiting the board. So just to show you how I have it kind of hooked up in here right now. Right, so I've got my 2 probes connected to ground, which is the chassis, and then the ends of where the RCA cables, right, where they connect to the jacks in the back. So what I wanted to verify was that there's no issue between here and in the board. So let me see if I can get this stupid service manual to come up, and then we're going to see which one of these posts right? Which one of these posts are for the right and the left channel signal leaving that board. Right, so there we have the tone exiting the board on pins 404 and 405. I had to go look at the service manual to see which pins those were. So you can see clean signal in, definitely not a good signal out on the left channel. So blue is left and yellow is right. So now this board there's really nothing to it. You got 2 capacitors, well, you got 3 capacitors, some transistors, some other things in here. I'm not sure what these are. So what I'm going to do now is kill power, and I'm going to start with the 2 caps coming in. I could poke around the board and see where this signal is maybe freaking out, but you know, I'm gonna start with the caps and go from there and see what pulling these caps reveal. All right, so I want to show you some, and I apologize for the shaky cam. It's just easier to kind of move this off of the base. So these 2 transistors, right? I have to get the actual numbers. I have to see what they are, but so you've got left channel, yeah, left channel, right channel. I think that's how it is. Anyway, signal going into the base of both of those transistors is good and clean. However, the signal coming out, as measured from the emitters, right, on those transistors, you can see, right, we have an issue. So I'm thinking that initially, because I did test the caps in circuit, and they both tested fine. I can pull them and replace them, which I will once I pull this board out. But I'm thinking that, you know, I just wanted to kind of see if I could determine, without just shotgunning, where the problem might lie. And right now it looks like these two transistors here are the likely culprits, or not these two, but the left channel transistor there is probably a likely culprit. So anyway, I'm going to remove this board, see if I can find replacements for those, pop some new ones in, and see, just kind of see what that does for us. All right, here's the after. So I replaced that transistor. Right, now this is coming out of the board. Remember, we saw that there was an issue coming out of the board before I replaced that 1344 with an 1845. Right, so there's the new 1845 right there. It's a little crooked. That board it's kind of tough to get to, sorry. That board's kind of tough to get to, so I'm going to straighten that out, because I am going to replace the 1344 on the other side. I'm going to replace those caps as well. I may do those, I don't know. 1344s, I don't know if they're on the shoot on site list, the replace on site list or not, but that should remedy this problem. According to the scope, it's good. I'm going to listen to it now, make sure that is indeed the fact, and then I will follow up after I have replaced the other transistor and those 2 capacitors, and we'll see what we have. Well, we've had a development. So after recapping the phono board, I tested for signal in and out of the board. Signal was fine. It was playing for about 5 minutes. Then I heard the same kind of characteristic or typical failing transistor sound, which to me, you get crackling. It sounds like distant radio static, and then you lose sound. So this is the left amp board. Yeah, this is the left amp board. I'm going to check to see what these transistors are on the board, and I would not be surprised if there are some transistors that are on the shoot on site list. Now I'm going to replace the capacitors as well when I do that. That was kind of a bummer, because I did identify one of the transistors that I replaced. This had really, really low HFE, really low gain compared to the other ones. So, but I don't think that was the issue Well, I mean, I think that was the issue with the amp board, but losing the channel completely, because now I've lost it on all inputs. I believe it's an issue somewhere, most likely on this board. So I'm going to go through this and see what I've got on here. It's like 945s, 733s. Sorry, I didn't realize you weren't seeing any of that. So anyway, I'm going to go through this board, recap it, pop back in, see where that gets us. And I really don't like just shotgunning repairs or things, but you know, by the time you take these out and you test them, you might as well replace them. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that on this board. And I'm kind of running out of time today, so I'll have to see what I can get done in the next 20 or 25 minutes or so, and then go ahead and test it. So I'm going to click away. I'm going to replace the transistors on this board, and see where that gets us. All right, so on the Maratnz, I was having an intermittent channel issue. Channel would drop out, and I also had a lot of static rumbling when I would start the receiver up, as I think the first video captured it, and then it was kind of, it would come and go. If it was warm, it wouldn't happen, and then sometimes the channel would cut out. And to make a long story short, issues with the tone control board. I'm not sure what component it was, but I talked to the shop owner, and he decided that, you know, a nice receiver like this, he wanted me to go ahead and recap it. So I did both amp boards, phono, power supply, and tone control. And recapping the tone control board fixed it. So to me it sounded like, you know, the staticky noise that a transistor makes as it's going. There wasn't any popping. I guess it could be a capacitor too. Once I recap this, it works just fine. I did replace the big filter caps too. That was kind of a chore, getting that, kind of dealing with how that's set up there. This middle bar here actually connects the negative on this cap and the positive on that cap. I had to use some wire to wrap that and get it secure, and it's all good now. But yeah, so I'm just putting this back together, and I've tested it, and the issue seems to be gone. You know what? I'm going to move the camera. I'm going to finish putting this together, and I'll move the camera, and then I'm going to just kind of recap everything and call this one done. So let me move this into position. All right, so here's the Maratnz, and I did upgrade to LEDs. The shop owner likes those, and the customers like those, so I did pop some new ones in. No more staticky noise, no more intermittent channel. All the lamps work. Stereo beacon works. So recapped, relamped, got rid of any transistors that were questionable. And while I was doing the amp boards, I just replaced all the transistors anyway. So yeah, so this one is done. It's going to head to the shop just in time for Christmas. It's what is it, about 10 days before Christmas today? No, 9 days. So we're going to drop this off at the shop today, and this is one that will actually be on display, so if anything else works its way out after the recap, I can get it. But and what I'll do today before I take it to the shop is as I usually do, I'll let it run a couple of hours. Oh, and I did DC offset and bias after I recapped the amp boards, so that's all good. So yeah, so the Maratnz 2275 is done. Glad to get this out of my garage and hopefully off to some new owner soon. So as always, if you like what you see, hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. All right, so just when I thought it was done, this thing, the left channel kept cutting in and out. And I discovered it was dependent upon the position of the receiver. I actually swapped the amp boards, right, to eliminate the amplifier. The problem remained on the left-hand side, even though I swapped it with the right-hand amplifier board. On its side, it would work fine, and then I'd lay it down, and then one or both channels would cut out, and it was doing all sorts of crazy things. So I believe I found the problem. I'm going to test here in a minute. But this component right here, I need to see what this is. I don't have the service manual up right now. But this component right here, that screw, was loose. And I did not loosen that screw. I actually loosened the screws on the power supply board. And I was going to just make sure that there were no broken traces that I couldn't see from the opening underneath. And I went to loosen this other screw right there, that black one on top, and discovered that the one on that RCA, whatever that thing is, again, I need to see what it is, on that RCA was loose. So now, and I'm sure it's going to make a liar out of me because that's how the day has been. If I turn it on, no more rumbling in the left channel, and I get sound in the left channel. And if I move it, before I would even like pick up a corner, I could tap the table, and that channel would cut out.
I was hoping that you hear.
So I think I solved the problem. All comes down to that one loose screw. Man, this thing was a pain. It was a pain. I mean, it was fun. It sucks tracking that down, but then when you finally figure it out, it's like, okay, that's not too bad. So now I'm gonna. Well, and the thing that sucks is I took this to the shop and then I set it on the table, connected, and the left channel was out. I'm like, well, what is this thing doing? It didn't make any sense. And then bring it home and it starts doing it, and it's intermittent, and now it seems to be pretty solid. So what I'm going to do now is let this run out here for about an hour, and then come check on it, and then let it sit overnight, turn it on in the morning, make sure it comes on all right. But hopefully this is the actual last segment and the last time you see this 2275. So anyway, now, if you like what you see, hit like, hit subscribe, and if you don't see this one again, that fixed the problem. And I will catch you in the next video.